Xiahou Dun. The battle-hardened kinsman of Cao Cao, who famously lost his left eye to a stray arrow during a conflict against Liu Bei. Historically, Xiahou's talents were just as much administrative as they were on the battlefield. He was one of Tao's most trusted generals and a relative of Xiahou Yuan. He earned the nickname Blind Xiahou and was known to the soldiers as One-Eyed Xiahou. He hated this nickname, however, and would throw a mirror to the ground whenever he saw his own reflection. His ferocity on the battlefield is emphasized in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, where he yanked out the arrow and then devoured the eyeball. He spent much of his career as a travelling soldier, but he ensured that he had teachers who came with him to help him study. He didn't own much property and lived a simple and frugal lifestyle. Any excess wealth he came across he would give to the poor. Then when he didn't have enough money for himself, he would take from the official treasuries rather than the common people. His younger brother was Xiahou Lian. He had another unnamed brother who died in 194 who left only a daughter. Some sources claim that Xiahou Yuan was his younger cousin, but others say Yuan was actually another younger brother. Xiahou Chong, Mao, Zizang, Zijiang, and at least 3 other of his sons were all made secondary marquis after Xiahou Dun passed away. He was posthumously titled by Cao Pi as Marquis Zhong, literally meaning loyal marquis. Pi paid sacrifices at the ancestral temple to a few select figures that helped create the Wei dynasty. Xiahou Dun was one of the 3. His lineage ran out of successors after his great-great-grandson died in 266. The Wei emperor of that time, Tao Huan, ordered that Xiahou kinsmen be found and promoted in order to continue the line of such a distinguished servant. He was born in Yu Province, Pei Commandery, Xiao County. His ancestral lineage never did reach national prominence in the past centuries of the Han dynasty, but the Xiahous often intermarried with other prominent clans, such as the Dings and the Taos. One source claims that Xiahou was 13, another says he was 14 when he murdered a man who insulted his teacher and drove off the offending party. His spirited but violent personality started to be known at a young age, albeit only locally for now. He was one of the first to join Cao Cao on his military campaigns, and he helped his trusted warlord recruit troops in Yingchuan to fight against the Yellow Turbans. He acted as his second-in-command in many battles from here on. In 189, during the coalition against Dongzhuo, he acted as Tao's right-hand man and served under him as a major, but they suffered defeat at Songzhi. He recruited fresh troops from Yang province to help Tao, but they soon faced a mutiny amongst their new soldiers. In the coming years, he was sent to Boma and promoted to the colonel who breaks charges. Then in 192, when Tao became the governor of Yan, Xiahou took over his old position as the administrator of Dong Commandery. Within the next 2 years, Yan province had come under Tao's control, but he campaigned east to avenge his father's death. Dun was left in charge of defences at Yan and was stationed at his capital city, Puyang. When Zhang Miao and Chen Gong rebelled by inviting Liu Bei into Yan, they tried to reassure Shun Yu that all would be well, whilst asking for supplies. This in fact tipped Shun Yu off, who then wrote to Xiahou Dun for help. Dun led a lightly armoured force to Zhuancheng County, but on the way he encountered and engaged Liu Bei's army. Liu Bei withdrew his men and then captured Puyang in Xiahou's absence. Sources vary as to whether Xiahou Dun's baggage train was still on the road or not, and if it was attacked by Liu Bei here. Either way, Liu Bei sent some soldiers to fake a defection over to Xiahou, who fell for the trick and was taken as a hostage with a heavy ransom in his own camp. His soldiers became fearful and confused, but Han Hao, who had been personally recruited earlier by Xiahou, successfully calmed the men. He led a surprise attack against the detainers and relieved his master from captivity despite putting him at risk. "You vicious rebels, how dare you abduct our great general and still expect to get out of this alive?" Han Hao wept as he freed Xiahou and told him, "I am bound by the laws of the state." The rebels surrendered over to Han Hao, but he counted off their sins before beheading every last one of them. Xiahou Dun marched on to Zhuancheng, reinforcing the small garrison there. Several dozen of the members and officials there plotted to surrender to Liu Bei and revolted. That night, Xiahou Dun executed the plotters and settled the army. He was suspicious of the inspector of Yu, Guanzhong, who had arrived with 10,000 men to assess the situation. As Xiahou feared that he also sought to join Liu Bei, he warned Shun Yu not to go and meet with him. "You are the safeguard for the whole province. If you go, you will certainly be in danger." Shun Yu disregarded this advice and his own importance and went to meet with Guanzhong anyway, impressively being able to convince him to withdraw. Cheng Yu, Zun Yu, and Xiahou Dun all put up a firm resistance despite the slim chance of success here. Liu Bei's military advances and the wavering loyalty of many officials and soldiers meant that he obtained Yu province in a single day, but his incompetence is highlighted in how he didn't isolate Cao Cao in Zhou province. This maneuver was attempted by Chen Gong but thwarted by Cheng Yu, who dispatched cavalry to the Kangting crossing. He knew that Chen Gong would have to cross here if he wanted to attack Dong A and Fan. When Chen Gong arrived and saw the crossing was occupied, he was forced to withdraw. Meanwhile, Liu Bei attempted to seize Zhuancheng, but Xiahou Dun and Xun Yu's success in snuffing out the rebellion made it impossible to capture, so Liu Bei also withdrew his army to Puyang to further his occupation. If Liu Bei had skirted round Zhuancheng rather than withdraw, he could have reached the eastern borders and prevented Cao Cao's hasty retreat back into these lands. Having heard of Han Hao's rescue mission in saving Xiahou, Cao was quite pleased. He wrote a decree stating that when dealing with hostage situations, in all cases the safety of the hostages was not to be taken into consideration, and that the hostage takers were all to be attacked and killed. As a result, the number of hostage situations greatly decreased, apparently disappearing altogether. This hardline approach had previously been in place, but in time it fell out of practice, and soon not even nobles or royalty were free from being targets. Han Hao was the first to reintroduce this hardline approach, and thus Cao commended him. Both Xiahou Dun and Yuan fought in the coming bloody battle against Liu Bei, which is where Dun lost his eye. Some say the troops came to refer to him as the Blind Xiahou, a term that he loathed. After 3 months of fighting, a drought and a plague of locusts forced both sides to withdraw. Xiahou was appointed administrator of Chenliu and Jiyan commanderies, promoted and enfeoffed. He personally assisted the peasants in the heavy lifting at Jiyan for his order to dam up the Taishu River, thus creating a reservoir. He encouraged his officers and the locals to plant rice, which they later came to greatly benefit from. His leadership was recognized by many, and by the year 195, Liu Bei had been driven out of Yan. By 198, Liu Bei had established himself in Zhou province, with its governor Liu Bei attempting to fight against him. He asked Cao for assistance. Xiahou was reassigned as the intendant of Hainan and ordered to assist. In the 7th month, he led troops to help Liu Bei, but he suffered a defeat at the hands of Gao Shun. He did not participate in the campaign against Yuan Shao, instead he held Hainan, assisting in keeping Tao's western flank secure. His administration did not go entirely smoothly, as he once had a falling out with his reporting officer when he was at Chenliu. Xiahou invited Wei Zhen and his wife out for a feast in the year 200, but Zhen strongly objected, calling it inappropriate. In Xiahou's anger he had him jailed, but soon released him. During the year 202, Xiahou Dun was dispatched with Li Dian and Ye Jin to oppose Liu Bei, who had arrived at the southern border county of Xi under Liu Biao's order. Liu Bei's raids were stopped when the armies met at Bowang, but after 1 day, Liu Bei set fires in his own camp and then fled. Li Dian warned that the enemy had no reason to run away, and I'm sure they'll lay an ambush. The road to the south is narrow and the trees and bushes are thick. You should not follow him. Dun disregarded this advice and went on anyway with Ye Jin. They were indeed ambushed, but Li Dian's rearguard soon arrived to save them. Upon seeing this, Liu Bei broke off his attack and withdrew. When Cao crossed north of the Yellow River in 204 to annex the northern territories from the Yuan clan, Xiahou remained behind with the troops to protect Cao's rear. After Cao captured Yi, Xiahou was promoted to the general who calms the waves, then returned to his position at Hainan. He was so deeply respected by Cao that he was given freedom to act on his own initiative and impose laws as he saw fit, without being restricted by regulations. The next year, Gao Gan incited revolts in Heidong, with Wei Gu, who took control of Shan and prevented local forces from crossing the river. Xiahou went to deal with them, but he met with Du Ji before he arrived. Du Ji and his small escort were allowed to cross first, while they plotted with those loyal to their cause before subduing the area completely. Xiahou also befriended Tian Shu around this time, and was sent to recruit him by Cao, but he failed to persuade him. As Cao prepared the armies to finish off the Yuans once and for all, he handed out greater rewards for 20 of his officers. Xiahou Dun's merits were recorded from start to finish, where his fief was increased from 1,800 households to 2,500. In turn, Dun was one of the many who endorsed Cao to become Duke of Wei. The edict written by Cao Huang in 266 regarding continuing the family line of Xiahou Dun states that his accomplishments were the first to be recorded in Wei's history. His meritorious service has been recorded on bamboo and silk. In former days, sacrifices in memorial of him have waned, a lamentable situation. Moreover, we were subject to the abdication of Wei, so how could we possibly neglect his achievements as a subject? we should select Xiahou Dun's closest relative and enfeoff them. In 215, Cao led forces to capture Hanzhong from Zhang, but their forces struggled against Zhang Wei at Yangping Pass. Defensive structures and local tribes had made the arduous journey through the mountains even more difficult. Zhang He and Zhu Ling were able to clear some of the way, but ultimately Cao was unable to overcome the enemy and was forced to withdraw. According to Dong Zhao's account, Xiahou Dun and Zhu Chu were sent to bring their fleeing troops back from the hills. Miraculously, in the darkness, some of the men had stumbled past the enemy defences and managed to breach an enemy camp. Xiahou Dun was sceptical when he first heard of this, but after observing it for himself, he personally reported it straight to Cao Cao. Secret orders were issued to Zi Biao and Gao Zuo, who led a successful attack, and Hanzhong was soon settled. By October of the next year, Cao had raised troops to invade Sichuan. Xiahou accompanied him to Juchao. The Wu troops were deeply entrenched at Rushu, which led to a stalemate and no battle was fought. Sichuan recognized Cao as the king and then offered him a truce, so he soon withdrew. Cao left Xiahou behind at Juchao in charge of 26 armies, including Zhang Ba and Sima Lang. Each of these armies may have comprised of 12,500 soldiers each, but as there was flexibility in forming them, it's unlikely that the total number of troops under his command was 325,000. No single officer received more favour from Cao Cao than Xiahou Dun. He would often accompany him, and was even permitted to enter his personal living quarters. Xiahou was rewarded with skilled musicians and famous dancers, along with a decree which read, "Because he made peace with the wrong tribe, Wei Jiang's exploits still endure, recorded in bronze and stone slabs. General Xiahou deserves more than that." Emperor Xian had made Cao a vassal king 3 years earlier, which granted him powers to establish an independent vassal kingdom. Many of Cao's subordinates held titles under the vassal kingdom, but Xiahou still held appointments under the Han government. As a sign of loyalty, he requested to serve under the vassal kingdom instead, but Cao told him, "I heard that the best rulers learn from their subjects, whilst the second best befriend their subjects. Officials are noble men of virtue. Why lower yourself to serve such a small kingdom like Wei?" This didn't sway Xiahou, who insisted further, and so Cao appointed him as a general of the vanguard. Dun was permitted to ride in the same carriage as Cao as he marched to Mobai in response to Guan Yu's attack in 219. He didn't partake in the battle at Fan Castle, and so returned soldiers to Shuchun before garrisoning at Xiaoling. From here, he oversaw the various southern armies. In late 219, Xiahou, Chen, Huangji, and many others urged Cao to take the throne from Emperor Xian. Xiahou said, "Everyone in the empire knows that the Han dynasty's lifespan has come to an end, and that there are many contenders seeking to replace it. Since ancient times, whoever succeeds in eliminating the people's troubles will win the hearts of the people and become their ruler. As of now, your highness has been fighting battles for over 30 years. You've made outstanding achievements, and the hearts of the people are with you. You should follow the will of heaven and the people. What's there to hesitate about?" But Cao replied, "These qualities are displayed in government. Then this also constitutes the exercise of government. If the mandate of heaven does belong to me, I'll be like King Wen of Shou." This was Cao's way of saying that he would never take the throne personally, whilst hinting that he'd leave that task to his successor, whereafter he can be posthumously honoured. Cao Cao died in the early 220s and was succeeded by his eldest, Cao Pi. Before Pi took the throne from the emperor, he promoted Xiahou Dun, but he died some months later from natural causes. Pi then led mourning rituals for him at Yi's East Gate. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.